So as many of you already know, virtually every single social media outlet has either banned or restricted significantly President Trump. And this happened while he was president, and it happened with social media outlets that we know, like Twitter, and it extended all the way to social media outlets that I had no idea the president was even on, like Pinterest or Snapchat. But it actually extends a little bit further than that if you take it out of the realm of social media outlets. Banking institutions that do business with President Trump while he was president decided that they were going to forgo doing business with him and close their accounts. Now, a lot of people have already started with the it's a private company, they can do whatever they want, and I'm sure that somebody right now in the live chat or in the comments of this video is typing something to the effect of it's a private company, they can do whatever they want in the comments of this video. However, I find it incredibly interesting and incredibly troubling that if the story were a financial institution rewarded President Trump on a personal level for policies or rhetoric that they agreed with, that we would call that bribery, but financial institutions closing President Trump's accounts while he's the president as a punishment for doing something that they disagree with is totally fine and all about private companies doing whatever they want. I don't think people have really thought through the extent of doing this to the sitting president, even if it was during a time when he was a lame duck president. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. What we're going to talk about today is specifically Twitter's justification for banning President Trump and Hunter Avallone bending over backwards to endorse this social media censorship in honestly one of the most incoherent and hilarious ways humanly possible. But before I get into this mess, I need to talk about how I'm going to be in Kenosha, Wisconsin, April 24th, 2021 for the Better Discourse 2 event, and I want you guys to come out and see me live along with a ton of your other favorite YouTubers that will definitely be there. Now, there's only a few people that are announced right now. There's Sydney Watson, Lisa Reynolds, who we actually talked about debating Hunter Avallone before, and Libby Evans, who writes for the Post Millennial. Now, they're announcing the speakers pretty slowly, but the event is not just going to have 4 people in it, so you want to book your tickets now, because the tickets not only cover the event, but they cover the after party, which is really dope, where you get to hang out and drink and actually socialize with the creators that actually attend the event. I think the after party is actually a little bit better than the event itself, but that's just me. I'm just saying that. I don't really know. And again, I don't work for Myth Informed. Get your tickets, link in the description, come out and see me, and we'll have a great time.
Donald Trump was banned on Twitter. Now, I kind of thought this was going to happen, but I didn't think it was going to happen this soon, if I'm being totally honest. That I'm a little on the fence with all of this, too, because I recognize that Donald Trump probably did violate TOS and no president is above the law?
Yes, Hunter, nobody is above the law, except of course for social media companies that have liability protections that no publishers have, even though they continually act like publishers editing content on their websites. Other than that, nobody is above the law.
Is that Donald Trump probably did violate TOS and no president is above the law? And they're not above the TOS either.
And yes, nobody is above TOS, unless you're leftist politicians calling for violent protests or supporting the Black Lives Matter rioters, or advocating for these criminals to be bailed out of jail after they are done obliterating cities. Other than that, nobody is above TOS on Twitter or any of these other social media platforms. Now to be clear, I understand 100% that Hunter Avallone has shifted politically on many issues, and this video is not about Hunter Avallone shifting on those political issues. What's interesting about this video is that Hunter Avallone is essentially a bad parody of an anti-right-wing channel now, and he has no idea what he's even saying throughout the course of this video, where he's justifying the banning of the acting president of the United States. And we're going to get into exactly what I mean, but first, I'm going to let Hunter Avallone read to you the 2 tweets that Twitter has determined have crossed the line on their platform.
So these are some of the tweets that they brought in, that are the comprehensive analysis anyway. On January 8th, President Trump tweeted, "The 75 million great American patriots who voted for me, America first and make America great again, will have a giant voice long in the future. They will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form." Okay. Shortly thereafter, the president tweeted, "To all those who've asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January 20th.
Now already, you should be able to detect a significant problem with Twitter's justification for banning President Trump off of their platform while he's the acting president. Now, to be fair to me and to all of you, we might not get this because we didn't go to Hunter Avallone's School of Free Thought, so maybe when Hunter Avallone explains via his School of Free Thought why this makes sense to ban President Trump under the glorification of violence and the threats of violence standard on Twitter, it will make a lot more sense. But based solely on these tweets, there is no way that this could be interpreted in any way as a threat or President Trump trying to communicate to people that they should do something criminal related to the Capitol or to the inauguration. Remember, President Trump saying that he will not be attending the inauguration was not a surprise. Joe Biden very publicly invited Mike Pence and not President Trump to the inauguration. He was trying to do the whole unity thing, but he did not want President Trump present. Now, this is incredibly important for a number of reasons, and it's actually why I'm making this video, because Twitter is not saying that there is anything threatening or inciting violence or actually endorsing violence in any of President Trump's tweets. What they did was take these two benign tweets and then say that people are reacting to these tweets in a certain way, unnamed people in an unnamed location that Twitter cannot actually document, are taking this in a way that could be an incitement to violence or a call to violence.
So here's Twitter's reasoning, okay? Due to the ongoing tensions in the United States and an uptick in the global conversation in regards to the people who violently stormed the Capitol on January 6, 2021, these two tweets must be read in the context of broader events in the country and the ways in which the president's statements can be mobilized by different audiences, including to incite violence as well as in the context of the pattern of behavior from this account in recent weeks. After assessing the language in these tweets against our glorification of violence policy, we have determined that these tweets are in violation of the glorification of violence policy. All right, under this policy, you can't glorify, celebrate, praise, or condone violent crimes, violent events where people were targeted because of their membership in a protected group or the perpetrators of such acts. I mean, that would definitely apply to Donald Trump's rhetoric when it came to when like the Capitol was actually being stormed, and he was like, "You're all special, go home, don't be mean, but they're trying to take everything away from you." Like, that could definitely fall under that. The use of the words American patriots to describe some of his supporters is also being interpreted as support for those committing violent acts at the U.S. Capitol. And see, this kind of plays back into what I said in last stream. Donald Trump doesn't really say anything. He plays both sides in such a way so that his supporters can take what they want from what he said, and it also gives Trump enough plausible deniability to back off some of the shit he said.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but this is ridiculous. Referring to your supporters as patriots, the 75 million people who voted for you as patriots, is not unusual or atypical in American politics. I remember distinctly when Hillary Clinton lost the primary to Barack Obama, and she gave a speech about how the glass ceiling wasn't broken, but there were something like 1 million cracks in it because she got millions of votes during that Democratic primary. President Trump saying that his supporters, even though they lost, will not be disrespected going forward and they will have a voice in politics in the future is nothing that is endorsing the actions of Capitol Hill. It's actually looking forward to the future, saying that I've started a movement, in Trump's words or in Trump's mind, and this movement will not die with me. This is actually very conciliatory and completely standard in American politics. However, Twitter has decided to take this tweet and determine how it will be interpreted by third parties and say that that is a justification for banning President Trump for tweeting something out that could be interpreted in a weird way if you listen to it backwards and you turn your ears and do all this crazy stuff as a potential threat. And the same is true for the second tweet about him saying that he won't attend the inauguration.
This determination is based on a number of factors, including President Trump's statement that he will not be attending the inauguration is being received by a number of his supporters as further confirmation that the election was not legitimate and is seen as him disavowing his previous claim made via two tweets by his deputy chief of staff that there would be an orderly transition on January 20th. So this is a good example of the nuance here. The fact that Trump said he won't be attending the inauguration, his supporters are viewing that as further confirmation that the election was illegitimate.
Now, of course, Hunter Avallone endorses this third-party interpretation of what a third party might interpret Trump's tweets as, because he is pro-censorship and anti-President Trump. Now, don't get me wrong, Hunter does feign a little bit of trepidation while he's endorsing it.
And again, I think that logic can be really dangerous here because at times, depending on if it's for like private citizens or people that don't have quite as much influence as the president of the United States, because I do think that banning someone for how their words can be interpreted can take you down a dangerous path. I do. And if that was being used more frequently, then it would also be concerning. But again, when it comes to Donald Trump specifically, when it comes to this specific incident, Donald Trump's words are being used to embolden the violence that occurred and his violent and radical supporters.
But he ultimately comes down on the side of Twitter and the censors, even though these tweets are in no way, shape, or form a violation of the policies that Hunter Avallone actually reads on air on his own show. So he is debunking himself in real time while agreeing with this because, again, Hunter Avallone is basically a parody of a left-wing channel at this point.
Like this American Patriots language, this absolutely could be interpreted as support for those committing violent acts at the U.S. Capitol. It absolutely could be. The mention of his supporters having a giant voice long into the future and that they will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form is being interpreted as further indication that President Trump does not plan to facilitate an orderly transition, and instead he plans to continue to support, empower, and shield those who believe he won the election. That's fair, actually. I was a little on the fence here. Hold on. They will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form. Interpreted as further indication that President Trump does not plan to facilitate an orderly transition, and instead, he plans to continue to support, empower, and shield those who believe he won the election. That's actually a very fair interpretation, and I agree with that. Yeah, that can definitely be taken that way.
I mean, seriously, again, I know we're not the free thinkers that went to the Hunter Avallone School of Free Thought, but President Trump saying that he's not attending the inauguration is being interpreted by Twitter as something that his supporters will interpret as a message that they can feel free to attack the inauguration. This makes absolutely no sense at all, again, when you factor in that President Trump wasn't even invited to the inauguration. President Joe Biden made it a point to publicly invite Vice President Mike Pence and not President Trump. So if you're going with the interpretation that a public figure, that is either the president or in this case somebody who's going to be president in Joe Biden, telling people publicly that President Trump is not going to attend the inauguration, but Mike Pence is going to attend the inauguration, is somehow something that can be bannable because some people might interpret that like President Trump and don't like Biden as a cue or a go-ahead that the inauguration is going to be a soft target and thus it is a good place to attack, then Joe Biden would be just as responsible as well as every other major news outlet who reported this information that's just factual. President Trump was not attending the inauguration.
This is a pretty fair and transparent assessment. This is one of my massive criticisms of big tech, is that they're not transparent enough. And oftentimes when they're not transparent, it gives so much ambiguity to these like rumors of conservative censorship. So I think that being transparent is extremely important for these massive tech companies. And I have to say, I'm pretty impressed with this explanation here. I do believe that this was pretty transparent, and I can understand their way of thinking.
But again, we have Mr. Hunter Avallone, there is no social media censorship against conservatives, and I'm definitely not pro social media censorship against conservatives, totally agreeing and aligning with this interpretation by Twitter. Because again, if Twitter, the third party, thinks that another third party might interpret your words in such a bad way that could lead to dangerous outcomes, then obviously that makes full and perfect sense and is a good justification to censor the president. Obviously, this is incredibly transparent, and Hunter Avallone, Mr. Freethinker, definitely is on board with this policy, even though it just makes no sense. It does not pass the smell test.
Well, a little bit more, I would go even a step further and say that this is a pure, clear as day example of personal responsibility. Anytime personal responsibility doesn't apply to the situation, conservatives just jump to personal responsibility to obfuscate. But then when it's something like this, where personal responsibility actually plays a massive role, Trump had a responsibility with his rhetoric and with his platform. He knew the rules. He signed up for the TOS just like everybody else did. And now he gets banned because of his own actions. And conservatives are going to try and say that, oh, it's conservative censorship. Look at how Trump's the victim now.
So when I talk about somebody becoming a parody of an anti-right-wing channel, this is specifically what I'm referring to. One of the techniques or tactics from people on the left on YouTube is to try to throw conservative talking points or conservative language back in their face. They like to do this. They like to call people triggered or snowflakes and all that stuff because conservatives use those words to disparage people, and they're trying to kind of claim that back and use that to attack conservatives. However, Hunter Avallone, Mr. Freethinker, is not even good at it because the word he's trying to reclaim and throw back in conservatives' faces when it comes to this is personal responsibility.
I'm sorry, this is a much clearer demonstration of personal responsibility. Personal responsibility applies in this situation so much better than when, like, black people are shot by police, for example.
It is genuinely difficult for me to believe that somebody can be this completely unaware of how dumb they're sounding as they are talking for so long on a platform like YouTube, where you're getting constant feedback in the comments and in the chat. The idea that this is an example of personal responsibility, when in the very language that Twitter has read, they're talking about how third parties might misinterpret the language of President Trump as the justification to punish President Trump, is absolutely ridiculous. It's not personal responsibility when you take away all personal responsibility from the people who might actually do harm and apply it to another person. It is literally the exact opposite. But Hunter Avallone actually goes further than that, and he says conservatives use personal responsibility in situations they don't apply, while the left and him are using it in this situation where it fits perfectly.
Personal responsibility applies in this situation so much better than when, like, black people are shot by police, for example. No, they banned him for how his words could be interpreted.
Why we're talking about black people being shot by the police, I have no idea. I do not understand how he made this leap to this situation. However, it is important to point out that this leap, this comparison, is completely irrational and makes no sense and is utterly nonsensical. The idea that personal responsibility does not apply in many of the public shootings of black people by police is completely ridiculous, because these people are often resisting arrest, they're out on felony warrants, they're attacking the cops. Their actions are often the direct cause of the reaction from the police that these people receive, and the only people trying to obfuscate personal responsibility in these scenarios are people like Hunter Avallone and other lefties on platforms like YouTube and in the mainstream media. Nobody is ducking personal responsibility more than BLM. I mean, seriously, how many videos have I done on this channel related to Michael Brown? Michael Brown, who is the sole author of his own peril. He is the cause of his death, and it was all due to his actions. Yet people never even talk about Michael Brown's actions when they're discussing the case, when they're on the left. They always talk about Officer Darren Wilson. They start digging into Darren Wilson's past, as if Darren Wilson's past made Michael Brown try to rob a store, reach for a gun, punch an officer, charge an officer with a gun after he had already been shot in the hand and he was receiving commands to not do that. Cori Bush is a congresswoman right now due to the fact that she was an activist and organizer after Ferguson related to the Michael Brown case. This is despite the fact that beyond any shadow of a doubt, multiple investigations and the forensics have disproved every single left-wing conspiracy theory about how Officer Darren Wilson was an evil, mean racist, and about how Michael Brown had his hands up and totally was not fighting the police officers. But Brown isn't even the worst of it. People still tweet and promote Corin Gaines as a victim of police brutality. Corin Gaines, who on video took her own son as a hostage and was pointing a shotgun at the police at the time that she was killed. This was after another video of a different traffic stop occurred where she was resisting the arrest and she was telling them that she was going to fight them to the death, and she actually told her infant child that she should also fight the police because the police are out to kill her. The entirety of the Black Lives Matter movement is an obfuscation of personal responsibility. It is pinning on the police, white people, or the systemic systems of structural oppression the perils of black people who are engaging with the police due to the fact that they have statistically much higher rates of violent crime. And of course, when you have much higher rates of violent crime, you are going to engage with the people that are meant to address those much higher rates of violent crime. I remember I did a video on this channel covering a debate between Hunter Avallone and a woman named Lisa Reynolds, who I definitely recommend you guys follow on her social medias. I'll link that in the description, and I said I was going to consider doing a part 2 of that debate, but I decided against it because how many times could I possibly point out how ridiculous it is that Hunter Avallone's position is that between 1934 and 1968, there was a policy called redlining, therefore black people are not to be blamed for the insanely higher rates of homicide in urban areas that are majority black. I mean, honestly, even the idea of Black Lives Matter, just examining the unarmed killings of black people, to which there's something like 19 to 25 cases per year, is an obfuscation of personal responsibility if your movement is called Black Lives Matter, because there are significantly more black on black murders within the black community as opposed to any other demographic of people in the United States of America, and that's not even talking about the statistically way less significant number of unarmed black people killed by the police. So we're looking not at the major problem, not at the major thing that is leading to the murder of black youths in the United States of America. We're looking at the double unicorn, as I like to call it, the unarmed black person killed by a white officer.
Donald Trump, as the president of the United States, has so much personal responsibility. Conservatives' all-time favorite. Donald Trump has so much responsibility as president.
Now, don't get me wrong, there are very principled libertarians and conservatives that can make an argument justifying why Twitter is free to ban whoever they want, including the president of the United States, and they make that same justification for all private businesses and all social media companies. The point of this video is not to go after that principled argument. The point of this video is to point out how ridiculous and stupid, and almost like a parody of an anti-right-wing channel, the arguments put forward by Hunter Avallone actually are.
And that nuance needs to be examined. It is a really nuanced issue. Again, like it's a very nuanced issue. So this is a good example of the nuance here. Like on its surface level, it does look a bit like a reach. However, this kind of plays back into what we were saying about the nuance.
The amount of times that this guy says there's nuance involved in this and nobody wants to talk about nuance without actually explaining the nuances of the situation is hilarious if you imagine that Hunter Avallone, and by the way, I don't think I have to imagine this, I think this is a fair interpretation, believes that the word nuance is a magic word that prevents you from having to argue any points whatsoever just by uttering the word nuance. Even Nuance Bro, a friend of this channel, does not spam the word nuance as much as Hunter Avallone.
People are going to be really mad at me right now because conservatives don't do very good when it comes to nuance. Like if you try to talk about the nuance of a situation.
Now, while the tweets being put forward by Twitter as the justification for Trump being banned in no way, shape, or form violate their terms of service and cannot be legitimately defined as a threat or a call to violence, what you don't seem to understand is that there's nuance in the situation, therefore it's justified, because nuance is a magic word at the Hunter Avallone School of Free Thought. Anyway, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Has Hunter actually stumbled on to the key nuances of the situation by saying the word nuance, or am I right, like always, because I'm always right? Let me know in the comments of this video. If you liked the video, then show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. Follow me on all my social medias. They are linked in the description. This has been me talking about Hunter Avallone justifying the banning of President Trump with terrible logic. Till next time.